There's this moment in every relationship, maybe not for everyone, but for people like me, where something shifts. You don't even realize it's happening until the air changes. It's like a silent draft in the house. You don't see it, but you feel it. And that morning, that was my draft. It started like any other. I had just poured myself a cup of coffee. The house still quiet except for the soft hum of the fridge. I wasn't expecting anything unusual. Jessica was already up, standing near the window with her back to me. Her posture was tense. Not the usual sleepy slump I was used to seeing first thing in the morning. She was holding her phone close, speaking in that half-whisper people use when they think no one else is around. I wouldn't have thought twice if not for the tone. Not what she said at first, but how she said it. Nervous, focused, controlled. Then, a few steps in, I heard it clearly. He still hasn't figured anything out. Just be ready like we planned. It hit me like a punch to the chest. But I didn't say anything. I didn't even breathe too loudly. Just stood there, frozen behind the kitchen doorway, pretending I hadn't heard a thing while my pulse started racing. That sentence alone didn't give me the full picture, but it didn't need to, because right as I stepped into the room, she turned slightly and caught sight of me. And in that split second, her entire body stiffened. Her finger darted to the screen and locked it so fast you'd think her life depended on it. Then she tucked the phone into her robe pocket like it had never existed. "Oh, hey," she said, forcing a smile like it was just another morning and she wasn't acting like someone mid-heist. "That was Lisa, my cousin. She's asking about that move we talked about, you know? Timing and stuff." She turned back to the counter, grabbing a cereal box like we were still in some normal, domestic rhythm. Like I didn't just overhear a sentence that cracked the shell of our life wide open. But she missed something. She didn't realize the screen hadn't gone dark fast enough. I saw it. The name on the phone. Trent. Work. Right next to it, a heart emoji. Bold. Red. And no, Jessica doesn't have a cousin named Trent. No one in her family tree even remotely close to that. I should know. I've been to every birthday, every wedding, every awkward Thanksgiving dinner for the past 7 years. I didn't say anything. Not right away. Not even a raised eyebrow. Just played dumb, nodded slowly, and sipped my coffee. I didn't even ask who Trent was. That's the part that scares me the most when I think about it now. I didn't ask because I already knew. Some part of me, deep down, had already started putting together the puzzle, even if I hadn't admitted it yet. She launched into small talk like nothing had happened. Said something about needing to drop off a return at the mall. Then pivoted into a story about a coworker's new baby. Smiled the whole time. She was good, I'll give her that. Practiced, even. It was like watching a performance, and I was the only one in the audience who knew it was all fake. But I kept playing my part too. That was my mistake or maybe my strategy, I still can't decide. I kept sipping my coffee, kept nodding, kept making eye contact like I wasn't dying inside. I didn't confront her, didn't ask a single follow-up. Not then. Because here's the truth people don't talk about. Sometimes it's not about the moment you find out. It's about the moment you let it play out. And in that moment I chose to let it play. Because when you hear something like that, he still hasn't figured anything out. You don't just explode. Not if you're smart. Not if you want to understand what you're actually dealing with. Exploding gives them a reason to hide better. To dig deeper into their lies. To twist the story. No, I needed more than that one sentence. So I watched her. Not in a creepy way. In a calculating way. I watched how she picked at her nails while talking. How her eyes didn't quite meet mine the same way they used to. How she clutched her phone a little tighter. How she started keeping it face down no matter where she set it. She used to toss it on the bed like it was no big deal. Now it was like a second limb she couldn't detach from. We sat in the same room that morning, sipping coffee from the mugs we picked out on a random Target run years ago. And it hit me. This wasn't our kitchen anymore. It was a stage. And she was acting. And I was sitting quietly in the audience, trying to figure out when the curtain had risen without my permission. She laughed at something I said, don't even remember what it was, and touched my arm in that familiar, effortless way. But it didn't feel effortless anymore. Felt like a line from a script. And suddenly, I started questioning everything. Had this always been scripted? Had there been other Trents? Other performances? That morning, I didn't go to work. I called in sick. First time in over a year. I told Jessica I wasn't feeling great, which wasn't a lie, even if it wasn't about a fever or a cough. She left without much fuss, said she hoped I'd feel better, and that she'd text me if she got a chance between meetings. I nodded and waved as she walked out the door. And as soon as it clicked shut behind her, I sat down at the kitchen table and stared at the phone-shaped imprint she'd left on the counter. You ever get that feeling where everything in your life suddenly feels unfamiliar? That's what hit me. The house, the furniture, the framed photo of us on the bookshelf. It all felt like a stranger's home. I kept going back to that moment. The whisper, the name, the heart emoji, the panic in her eyes when she saw me standing there. And that one sentence. He still hasn't figured anything out. She was right. I hadn't figured anything out. Not completely. But now, I was about to, because that sentence didn't just spark suspicion. It lit a fuse. The day after I heard Jessica whisper those words on the phone, I stopped being her husband in the way I used to be. Not outwardly. I still made the coffee, still said love you when she left the house, still sent little texts during the day. But inside, I had shifted. Something inside me had beg *n to calculate, to listen more closely, to take mental snaps *ts of everything. Because once the seed of doubt is planted, you start noticing the parts of your life that don't quite fit together anymore. The first thing I noticed was her time. Her hours got fuzzy. Jessica started coming home later than usual. Not by much at first, 10-15 minutes here and there, but gradually that stretched into longer windows. Sorry, babe, last-minute meetings, she'd say, breezing through the door with fast explanations and even faster kisses. But sometimes her hair would be styled differently than it was that morning. Not messy like she'd been working, restyled, fluffed, refreshed. One night, I caught a faint smell on her jacket. Cologne. Not mine. Not anything I'd ever worn or owned. I asked her about it. Lightly, not accusing, just curious. She gave a tight laugh and waved it off. Oh, probably one of the guys from the elevator. We got packed in like sardines leaving the building. I let her think I believed that. But I knew two things. Jessica hated crowded elevators, and she always left through the side exit stairs because she didn't like waiting. So unless she'd suddenly changed a years-long habit, she was lying. Just flat-out lying. And once you see the first lie, the others start becoming easier to spot. I started tracking her habits without really trying. Her phone was always on silent now, always screen down. Once, while we were watching a movie, her screen lit up. A notification popped up, Instagram, from someone named T. She swiped it away so fast I barely saw it. But I noticed. Every little thing started going on a mental whiteboard I was building in my head. I also noticed she began leaving the room to take calls. We'd be in the middle of dinner, and she'd suddenly need to check on a client or call her sister. She never used to do that. Jessica always hated when people interrupted meals for work. It can wait, she used to say. Now, everything couldn't wait. And then came the social media shift. At first, it was subtle. She archived a few photos of us from her Instagram. Not deleted, just hidden. Our anniversary post, a vacation selfie in Sedona, the one of us at her sister's wedding. They disappeared quietly. I asked her once, just once, about it. Did you delete that post from Cabo? She looked up from her phone, gave a half smile. Oh yeah, just cleaning up my grid. You know how people are obsessed with aesthetics now. Aesthetics. Apparently, I didn't fit the aesthetic anymore. What followed wasn't a dramatic unraveling. It was slow, quiet, death by 1,000 cuts. She started tagging fewer places when she went out. Her stories became filtered and generic. A latte here, a sunset there. No faces, no friends, no me. Meanwhile, I noticed certain people stopped liking her posts entirely. Friends of mine, friends of hers who had been at our wedding. It was as if she was curating a new version of herself. One where I didn't exist. The final straw came during her sister's bachelorette weekend. She was out of town for 3 days. I didn't expect hourly check-ins or anything like that. We trusted each other, or at least we used to. But what I didn't expect was radio silence. I texted her once, just a quick, "Hope it's going great. Miss you." She left me on read. When I opened her profile later that night, I was gone. Blocked. Completely. No warning. No fight. Just vanished from her digital world. I don't mean she unfollowed me. I mean I couldn't see her posts, couldn't tag her, couldn't message her. She'd hard-blocked me. Like a stranger. Like I was someone she wanted no part of. I didn't confront her. Not yet. I didn't want an argument. I wanted something stronger. So instead, I reached out to a mutual friend. Someone who still followed her account and wouldn't realize the weight of what I was asking. "Hey," I said casually, "if you talk to Jess, can you just pass along a message?" They agreed, no questions asked. I gave them just one sentence. "Tell her I'm no longer the one who stays silent." 20 minutes later, I had 18 missed calls. Back to back, all from Jessica. One after another. A few minutes apart, then suddenly in bursts. Call. Hang up. Call again. Voicemails. Then texts. Then silence. Then more calls. The last voicemail wasn't a message. It was just the sound of her crying. Breathless sobs. Gasping. Like the weight of something had finally landed. But I didn't answer. Couldn't. Not because I was angry, but because I wasn't ready to hear more lies. Because if I answered, she'd spin it again. She'd flip the narrative, cast herself as misunderstood, as caught in some emotional storm. I'd been with her long enough to know the script by heart, and I wasn't playing that role anymore. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, feeling everything and nothing at the same time. The silence in the room was heavier than any shouting match we could have had. Heavier than any broken plate or slammed door. It was the sound of something ending. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I didn't sleep much either. But somewhere between 2 and 4 a.m., I made a quiet promise to myself. I was going to find out the truth. Not just parts. Not just implications. The whole thing. The who. The when. The how long. Because she wanted to live like I didn't know? Fine. But now I was watching. Now I was listening. Now I was drawing the lines between every story she'd ever told me in the past few months and figuring out what didn't add up. And suddenly, almost none of it did. I've heard people say that when you finally see the truth, it hits you all at once. Like lightning. Fast. Blinding. Loud. But for me, it was different. When I finally saw it, when I finally had it in front of me, it didn't strike like thunder. It settled. Heavy. Quiet. Final. It happened on a Saturday. One of those deceptively calm weekends where nothing seems off on the surface. Jessica had told me earlier in the week that she had to work late on Friday, that she'd probably sleep in Saturday morning. "Don't wait up," she said, kissing my cheek with that distant affection I was beginning to resent. She wasn't home when I woke up. Not Saturday morning. Not by noon. Not even by 2. I texted her. "Everything okay?" Nothing. I didn't double text. I didn't need to. Instead, I spent the afternoon helping my brother move into his new apartment across town. Lifting boxes, hauling dressers, trying to sweat out the tension that had been building in me for weeks. It helped in a strange way. Gave my mind something to do. Kept my hands busy so I wouldn't start picking apart every lie she'd told me. By the time we were done, the sun was beginning to set and we were starving. We grabbed dinner at a quiet local cafe near his new place. A spot with big windows and terrible parking but amazing grilled sandwiches. The kind of place Jessica and I used to go to before everything got weird. And that's when it happened. I was mid-bite, half listening to my brother talk about paint swatches, when I saw them. Through the window, across the street, at another cafe, laughing, smiling. Her head tilted back in that way she does when she's genuinely entertained. Jessica. And sitting right across from her? Trent. I knew it was him. The same name from her phone that day in the kitchen. The name I'd pretended not to notice. The work label. The red heart emoji. And now there he was. In real life. wearing a black hoodie and that smug expression you only see on people who think they're getting away with something. She was sitting next to him, not across. That was the detail that really got me. They weren't chatting like coworkers. They weren't catching up like friends. She was pressed into his side, hand resting on his leg like it belonged there. Her other hand? Wrapped around a coffee cup with the same nail color I'd complimented just the other night. The same nails that had traced circles on my arm less than a week ago. She was wearing the gray sweater I hadn't been able to find that morning. The one she always said felt too soft to lose. The same sweater I gave her last Christmas, wrapped in blue tissue paper and love. And on her left hand, the ring. My ring. Still there. Still shining. Still on her finger while she leaned into someone else. Time slowed. I didn't stand up. I didn't march across the street or throw open the door like a movie villain. No. I reached into my pocket, pulled out my phone, and raised it slowly. Angled it toward the window. One tap. Click. That was it. One photo. No flash. No drama. Just clarity. I stared at the screen for a few seconds. Just long enough to memorize the image. Her face glowing in the soft cafe lighting. His hand resting on her thigh. Her smile. Effortless, joyful, unfamiliar. And that damn sweater. That ring. That lie. I didn't show it to my brother. Didn't explain. I told him I wasn't feeling great. Thanked him for the sandwich, and left before dessert hit the table. I drove home in silence. No music. No GPS. Just the buzz of the engine and the pounding of my heart. My hands didn't shake. My voice didn't scream. I felt calm, almost too calm. When I pulled into our driveway, Jessica's car wasn't there yet. Of course it wasn't. So I waited. I sat on the couch, lights off, phone in hand, and just stared at the photo. Zoomed in, zoomed out, tried to make myself feel something. Rage, betrayal, heartbreak. But the emotion didn't come like a wave. Came like a leak. Slow, cold, creeping. She walked through the door a little after 10 p.m. Purse slung over her shoulder, humming some tune I didn't recognize. "Hey babe," she called into the hallway, like she hadn't just spent the evening wrapped around another man. "Sorry I missed your text. My phone died, and I couldn't find a charger until late." She kissed the top of my head as she passed the couch. I didn't move, didn't say anything. "Want me to make some tea?" she offered from the kitchen, opening the cupboard like nothing had changed. I didn't respond. Eventually, she came into the living room, mug in hand, and sat next to me like we were still a team. "You okay?" she asked. I nodded, because the time to talk hadn't come yet. Not that night, because I wasn't looking for a confession. I wasn't going to ask questions she could lie her way through. I wasn't going to beg for truth from someone who clearly didn't respect me enough to offer it freely. No, I was going to wait, because now I had proof. Now I had a single, unshakable truth. Not a suspicion. Not a gut feeling. Not a guess or a fear. A fact. Frozen in time. Documented. Undeniable. She kept talking. Some small talk about how stressful work had been, and how she hoped the week ahead would be less crazy. I nodded. I smiled once. I said, "Yeah, hope so." Because sometimes the most powerful thing you can do isn't react. It's prepare. And I was preparing. Because now the lies weren't vague anymore. Now they had a face. A name. A timestamp. She thought I didn't know. She thought I was still blind. But I wasn't. And this wasn't just a marriage anymore. It was a performance. And I had just seen the show from the other side of the curtain. After I took that photo, everything changed, even if Jessica didn't notice at first. Or maybe she did and didn't want to admit it. Either way, the performance didn't stop. She kept hitting her marks, reciting her lines, pretending our life was still the same script we'd been reading from for years. But I had already stepped off stage. I didn't confront her that night. I didn't slam a door or throw the photo on the kitchen table and demand answers. That would have given her too much power. Too much room to maneuver, cry, deny, or rewrite the story into something softer. Something survivable. No, I was done being a character in her play. The next morning I woke up early. Earlier than usual. She was still asleep, curled up in the bed like a child. Peaceful. Innocent. I sat on the edge of the mattress for a moment, staring at the person I thought I knew. There were no signs on her face. No evidence of what she was doing behind my back. If you didn't know better, you'd think she was the kind of woman who'd never hurt anyone. But I did know better now. And knowing changes everything. That morning I packed a small duffel bag, gym clothes, a phone charger, an extra pair of shoes. Nothing dramatic. Just enough to keep in my car in case I needed space. Then I drove to the bank. I didn't clean out the joint account. I'm not that kind of person. But I did something subtle, something quiet. I opened a new checking account in my name only and rerouted my direct deposit from work. I left just enough money in the old account to cover groceries, gas, bills, things she wouldn't immediately notice. Things that kept the illusion going. And then I waited. I started paying attention to the small things. Every time she claimed to have a work dinner, I logged the time. Every time she came home with a different perfume, or claimed she just got a sample from a coworker, I made a note. I became an observer of our marriage, a quiet witness to its collapse. She still tried to act like everything was normal. She asked if I wanted to watch our usual shows. She cooked dinner on Wednesdays like always. She even mentioned planning a trip in the fall, throwing out names of places we'd never get around to visiting. I nodded, smiled, agreed. But inside, I was already gone. There's a kind of grief that comes not from losing someone, but from realizing they were never who you thought they were. The slower, heavier, like watching a house collapse in slow motion. You want to run inside and grab the photos off the walls, but you also know it's too late. One weekend, she hosted a house party, just a small one. Some coworkers, some mutual friends, a few people I barely recognized. She insisted we throw it, said we needed to be social again, that we were becoming hermits. I didn't argue, but when Saturday rolled around, I didn't help her clean. I didn't set out chairs or pick up wine or ask if we had enough ice. I left. No explanation. No lie. Just a quiet, "I'm heading out for a while." She looked up from arranging snacks on a platter, surprised. "Wait, you're not staying for the party?" I shrugged. Didn't know I needed to. She tried to laugh it off, but her eyes darted away too quickly. "You're being weird lately," she said, frowning slightly. "You okay?" "Fine," I replied, grabbing my keys. "Just needed air." And I walked out. That was the first time I saw the mask slip. She didn't say anything else. Didn't follow me to the door. But when I got back later that night, the party was over. The lights were off. She was already in bed, wide awake, staring at the ceiling. She didn't speak. Neither did I. And that silence, that was louder than any fight we could have had. From that day on, I started detaching methodically. I stopped doing small favors for her. I didn't fill her gas tank like I used to. Didn't grab her favorite snack from the grocery store. Didn't bring home flowers when I noticed she was stressed. I wasn't cruel. I was simply done performing. If she noticed, she didn't say anything. But I could see it. In her eyes. In the way she hovered a little longer before saying goodnight. In the way she reached for my hand while we walked through the hardware store and found nothing but air. I was a ghost in the house we built together. And she was the one who buried me there. I started going for long drives. Sometimes I'd park by the water. Sometimes I'd sit in empty parking lots and just listen to the wind rattle through the trees. I needed the quiet. I needed space to figure out what my life would look like when I finally stepped out of the wreckage. At night, I'd lie in bed and think about who I used to be with her. The version of me that made playlists for road trips, who remembered her coworkers' birthdays, who once drove across town in a snowstorm to bring her soup when she was sick. That man had been slowly erased, and she didn't even notice. Or maybe she did. Maybe that was part of her plan. One night, while brushing her teeth, she turned to me in the mirror. "You've been different lately," she said, foam gathering at the corner of her mouth. Like distant. I met her eyes in the reflection. Calm. Cold. "I wonder why," I said. She stopped brushing for a second. Looked at me like she wanted to say something. But she didn't. She rinsed, spit, left the room. That was the moment I knew. She didn't want to fix it. She just wanted to manage the damage. But me? I wasn't interested in damage control. I was preparing for the final scene. And when it came, I wanted it to be undeniable. There's a point in every unraveling when silence is no longer strength. It's surrender. I had been quiet for weeks, watching, documenting, withdrawing. But the dam was starting to crack. Not because I was angry, but because I had nothing left to protect. She made the first loud move. Fitting, really. It was her mother's birthday. A big deal every year. Jessica adored planning it. It wasn't just dinner, it was an event. Restaurant reservations, gift baskets, wine that cost more than our grocery bill, personalized menus. She went all out. I used to find it charming. This year, I found it ironic. She insisted I come. "It'll mean a lot to Mom if we're both there," she said while pretending not to be annoyed that I barely looked up from my laptop. "We?" I asked quietly. She ignored that and went back to scrolling through her phone. So I went. I wore the shirt she once said made me look too serious. The one I kept buried at the back of my closet. I wore it intentionally because I was serious. I wasn't her prop anymore. I wasn't dressing up for the part of doting husband in her carefully curated life. The restaurant was full when we arrived. A long table stretched across the private room. White linen, flickering candles, crystal glasses catching soft light. Everyone was already seated when we walked in. Her mom smiled, waved. Her sister beamed and patted the chair beside her. Jessica sat across from me. Of course she did. Dinner started fine. Small talk. Wine poured. The usual dance of polite laughter and layered family dynamics. I watched Jessica the whole time. Watched how easily she slipped into her role. The way she talked about her job. Laughed at half-funny jokes. Reached for my hand once under the table and then pulled back just as fast. I didn't hold it. About halfway through the meal, the conversation drifted toward vacations. Someone asked if we had plans. "You guys are overdue for a getaway, right?" That's when Jessica leaned forward, smiling like she was about to deliver a line she'd been rehearsing. "Oh, I don't know," she said casually, waving a hand. "Mark's not really the adventurous type." A few people chuckled politely. She kept going. "I mean, I wanted to do something exciting, Italy, maybe even Iceland. But Mark would probably rather just stay home and organize the garage." More laughter. This time louder. Hers the loudest. I didn't laugh. Then she added, "Sometimes I wonder if I married a spreadsheet." And that's when I decided it was time. The silence that followed was awkward. The kind that hovers over a table like smoke. Her mother raised an eyebrow. Her sister glanced at me like she expected a punchline. There wasn't one. I reached into my jacket pocket. Slowly, deliberately, and I pulled out my phone. The same phone that held the truth. The same phone that had sat silent in my hand for weeks. I unlocked it, scrolled with my thumb, and found the photo. The photo. I placed the phone face up on the table in front of her plate. No words. Just that image. Jessica, in her gray sweater, pressed against Trent's side, laughing, smiling, hand resting where it didn't belong. Her ring catching the light. The room went still, dead still. Jessica's face lost all color. Her eyes didn't move. She just stared. At the image. At herself. At what she thought she had kept hidden. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't explain. I just looked at her and said, calm as the glass of water in front of me, "Now they know too." No one spoke. Not her mother. Not her sister. Not the friend of the family on the far end of the table who had laughed the hardest at her spreadsheet joke. No one. I stood up, pushed my chair in, straightened my jacket, and I walked out. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. The door behind me didn't slam, but it closed with the weight of everything she tried to keep hidden. The noise of it, muted by carpet and candlelight, was louder than any argument we'd ever had. Outside, the air was cool. Honest. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I could breathe. My chest wasn't tight. My head wasn't spinning. I wasn't drowning in what-ifs or trying to decode her behavior. Everything was suddenly, painfully, perfectly clear. I got in my car, drove a few blocks, parked, just sat there, watching people walk down the sidewalk, laughing, carrying leftovers in paper bags, holding hands like nothing in the world was broken. And I felt, okay. Not good, not healed, but okay. I didn't check my phone for a long time. I already knew what would be waiting. And sure enough, when I finally looked, the screen was flooded. Missed calls, voicemails, texts, each one more desperate than the last. Mark, please. Where did you go? Can we talk? I didn't mean for it to happen like that. Please don't shut me out. Somehow, the word please lost its meaning when it came from her. That night, I stayed at a hotel. Not because I needed to, not because I had to, but because I wanted the distance. I needed a space where her scent didn't cling to the pillows, where the kitchen didn't remind me of Saturday mornings spent laughing about nothing, where the silence wasn't haunted. I laid on a stiff mattress under generic hotel art and thought about what came next. There were no more questions to ask, no more evidence to collect, no more lies left to tolerate. I had given her every opportunity to stop, to be honest, to come clean. And she had chosen over and over not to. She chose him. She chose this. And now I was choosing something too. I was choosing to be done. Not just done being her husband. Done being her backup plan. Her safe option. Her fallback after the excitement wore off and the guilt set in. I wasn't going to be the guy who stood quietly by while she rebranded herself as a victim of her own mistakes. I didn't care what story she'd tell her family, her friends, the internet. I had seen the truth. I had shown the truth. And when she laughed at me in front of a table full of people who once respected me, that was her mistake. Not the affair. Not the lies. The humiliation. That's what broke it. That's what made it final. Because cheating can be explained away with enough emotional spin. I was lost. I was confused. It wasn't real. But public disrespect? That's a choice. And it was the last one she ever made on my behalf. She cried, called, sent long texts about how she didn't mean it, that it was a moment of weakness. She begged me not to file, said we could fix it, but I was already gone inside. I filed the papers calmly. Split everything down the middle. She called it cruel. I called it closure. She made her choice. I just finally made mine. I live somewhere smaller now, but it's mine. Quiet. Honest. No masks. Jessica posts quotes about growth and loss. Maybe she's healing. I don't watch. I don't hate. I just don't show up anymore. When she gave the world her last joke at my expense, I did what mattered most. I left the theater and closed the door.